April 18, 1943. 6 a.m. Bougainville Island, Solomon Sea. The morning mist clings to the jungle canopy like smoke from a dying fire. In the cockpit of his Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, Admiral Yamamoto adjusts his white gloves one final time, the leather soft against his fingers that had once signed the orders for Pearl Harbor. The engines hum with mechanical precision, their vibrations traveling through the aluminum fuselage and into his bones. Below, the Solomon Sea stretches endlessly, its surface catching the early light like scattered diamonds. The Admiral checks his pocket watch. 6:20 a.m. exactly. Punctuality, he had always believed, was the hallmark of naval excellence. Yamamoto does not know that 1,800 miles away, in a secret communications facility buried beneath the volcanic soil of Hawaii, American codebreakers have been reading his mail for months. He does not know that his meticulously planned inspection tour, designed to boost morale among his scattered island garrisons, has become his death warrant. The same attention to detail that made him Japan's most feared naval strategist now marks him for elimination. In 18 minutes, 16 American P-38 Lightning fighters will rise from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, their twin engines screaming across the morning sky. In exactly 4 hours and 35 minutes, the architect of Pearl Harbor will plummet into the jungle below, his body still strapped to his seat, his sword still at his side. This is the story of how American ingenuity, born in the basement laboratories of universities and the minds of chess-playing mathematicians, reached across the vastness of the Pacific to pluck Japan's greatest military mind from the sky. It is the story of Operation Vengeance, a mission so precise, so calculated, that it would demonstrate to the world that in this new kind of warfare, information moved faster than bullets, and minds could be weapons more devastating than bombs. The roots of this moment stretch back to December 7, 1941, when Yamamoto's carefully orchestrated surprise attack on Pearl Harbor shattered American naval power in the Pacific. In the aftermath of that date which will live in infamy, as President Roosevelt called it, American military leaders faced a harsh mathematical reality. Japan controlled an empire spanning 3,000 miles of ocean, defended by the world's most experienced naval air force and protected by what seemed an impenetrable code of military communications. But America possessed something the Japanese had not fully comprehended: an industrial democracy's capacity to transform its universities, its corporations, and its brightest minds into instruments of war. While Japanese admirals still believed in the decisive power of the battleship and the samurai spirit, American cryptographers were waging a different kind of battle entirely. In nondescript buildings scattered across the mainland, teams of linguists, mathematicians, and engineers worked around the clock to penetrate the Japanese naval code known as JN-25. The breakthrough had come gradually, like dawn breaking over a mountain range. Led by Commander Joseph Rochefort at Station HYPO in Pearl Harbor, the American code-breaking effort had achieved what many thought impossible. They could read Japanese naval communications almost as quickly as the intended recipients. By early 1943, American intelligence officers knew the sailing schedules, fuel consumption rates, and strategic intentions of the Japanese combined fleet better than many Japanese admirals themselves. For Yamamoto, this technological revolution remained invisible. Trained in the classical traditions of naval warfare at the Imperial Naval Academy, he understood the ocean as a chessboard where fleets maneuvered for decisive battle. His strategic thinking, brilliant though it was, remained anchored in concepts of honor, surprise, and the concentrated application of force. He had studied at Harvard University from 1919 to 1921, had traveled extensively in America, and understood better than most Japanese leaders the industrial might he had awakened. Yet even Yamamoto could not fully grasp how American democracy's decentralized creativity, its ability to mobilize not just factories but minds would transform the nature of warfare itself. The contrast between Japanese expectations and American reality had been building since the early months of 1942. Japanese naval doctrine, refined through decades of Pacific operations, emphasized quick, decisive victories achieved through superior training and spiritual discipline. Their pilots, the finest in the world at war's outbreak, expected to face American aviators softened by democratic luxury, untested by the rigors of Bushido. Japanese intelligence estimated that American industrial production, while impressive in quantity, would lack the precision and quality necessary for sustained Pacific operations. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented in military history. An entire nation's economic and intellectual capacity focused on a single objective. American factories, retooled from automobile production to aircraft manufacturing, began producing fighters and bombers at rates Japanese planners had deemed impossible. More importantly, these aircraft incorporated technological innovations, improved radios, radar systems, and fire control mechanisms that reflected America's advantage in applied science and industrial research. By the spring of 1943, this transformation was complete. The same Bell telephone laboratories that had revolutionized civilian communications now developed encrypted radio systems for military use. IBM's punch card machines, originally designed for business applications, now tracked Japanese ship movements across thousands of miles of ocean. Universities from MIT to Caltech had become research centers for military technology, their professors and graduate students working on projects that would have seemed like science fiction just 2 years earlier. The intelligence picture that emerged from this massive effort revealed Yamamoto's greatest vulnerability: his predictability. Japanese naval culture, with its emphasis on hierarchy and precise planning, created communication patterns that American codebreakers could exploit. When Yamamoto scheduled an inspection tour of forward bases in the Solomon Islands, he did so with characteristic attention to detail. His staff transmitted flight plans, timing, aircraft specifications, and escort arrangements, all encrypted in codes that Station HYPO had long since mastered. On April 13, 1943, American cryptographers intercepted and decoded a message that would change the course of the Pacific War. The message, transmitted from Rabaul to Japanese bases throughout the Solomons, contained Yamamoto's complete itinerary for his upcoming morale tour. It specified that the Admiral would depart Rabaul at 6 a.m. on April 18th aboard a Mitsubishi G4M bomber, escorted by 6 Zero fighters. The flight would proceed to Balala Airfield, arriving at 8 a.m., then continue to Shortland Island, arriving at 8:40 a.m. before returning to Rabaul. The message represented more than tactical intelligence. It was a window into the Japanese soul. Yamamoto's insistence on maintaining his published schedule, despite the obvious security risks, reflected the Japanese military's commitment to precision and honor. To alter the timing would suggest fear, would imply that the enemy had gained some advantage. Better to maintain face, to demonstrate that Japanese naval officers feared no American response. American planners viewed the same information through an entirely different lens. For them, Yamamoto's schedule represented a mathematical problem. Given known aircraft performance characteristics, fuel consumption rates, and flight distances, could American fighters intercept the Japanese formation at a predetermined point in space and time? The answer, calculated on mechanical computers and verified through multiple independent analyses, was yes, but only barely. The mission would require perfect timing, flawless navigation, and extraordinary luck. 18 P-38 Lightning fighters would launch from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, flying a circuitous route over open ocean to avoid Japanese radar stations. They would have exactly enough fuel to reach the interception point, engage the enemy, and return, with perhaps 15 minutes to spare. Any delay, any navigation error, any mechanical failure would doom the mission to failure. Yet American confidence in the mission reflected something deeper than mere tactical calculation. The P-38 Lightning itself embodied American industrial philosophy: twin engines for reliability, heavy armament for decisive engagement, and advanced electronics for precision navigation. Unlike Japanese aircraft, which prioritized agility and spiritual purity of design, American fighters incorporated redundant systems, armor protection, and communication equipment. They were designed not by individual genius, but by teams of engineers working within large corporate structures, tested in wind tunnels and proven in systematic flight programs. The symbolic weight of what Americans carried into battle extended beyond their aircraft to the very nature of their mission. Each P-38 pilot wore a silk escape map printed with detailed information about friendly forces, native populations, and emergency procedures. Their survival kits contained not just medical supplies and food, but also gold coins for bribing potential rescuers and phrase books for communicating with local populations. Even in the moment of combat, American planning assumed that individual lives had value, that democratic society's investment in each citizen warranted extraordinary efforts at preservation. Japanese pilots, by contrast, carried samurai swords and photographs of the emperor. Their training emphasized death before dishonor, the importance of spiritual purity over mechanical reliability. Yamamoto himself flew that morning with his ceremonial katana, its blade folded in the ancient tradition, its edge sharp enough to cut silk dropped across the steel. The sword represented 15 centuries of warrior culture, the distilled essence of Bushido philosophy. The morning of April 18th brought perfect flying weather to the Solomon Islands. At Henderson Field, Major John Mitchell completed his final briefing of the 18 P-38 T-38 pilots who would attempt the longest fighter interception in aviation history. The mathematics were elegant in their precision: 435 miles to the intercept point, flying at 290 miles per hour, maintaining radio silence, navigating by dead reckoning across featureless ocean. Mitchell's pilots would arrive at precisely 9:35 a.m. local time at map coordinates 06-38 30 south, 106 down second 3.605 horn east, a point in empty sky above Bougainville Island where, if the intelligence was correct, if the Japanese maintained their schedule, if the winds remained favorable, Admiral Yamamoto would appear. Treek 17 turin vein maintain noun von 30. How the 18 Lightnings lifted off from Henderson Field's steel matting runway, their twin Allison engines carrying them into the crystalline Pacific morning. Behind them, they left the complex infrastructure of American logistics: fuel trucks driven by Tennessee farm boys, ammunition loaded by Detroit factory workers, spare parts manufactured in plants from California to Connecticut. The entire American industrial economy had contracted to this single moment, to these 18 aircraft climbing toward their rendezvous with history. Yamamoto's morning began with similar precision, but different assumptions. His Betty bomber, maintained by Japanese ground crews who had learned their craft in the rigid traditions of the Imperial Navy, represented the pinnacle of Japanese aeronautical engineering. Its twin Mitsubishi Kase engines had been hand-assembled by craftsmen who viewed their work as a form of spiritual discipline. The aircraft's range and payload exceeded anything in the American inventory, its design reflecting Japanese concepts of elegant simplicity and purposeful function. Yet the philosophical differences extended to the smallest details. Japanese aircraft manufacturers, working within a hierarchical system that emphasized perfection over mass production, created machines that were individually superior but systemically vulnerable. Each engine was a masterpiece, but spare parts were scarce. Each pilot was extensively trained, but replacement training programs were inadequate. The Japanese approach to warfare, like their approach to aircraft design, assumed that superior quality could overcome superior quantity. American industrial doctrine made exactly the opposite assumption. The P-38 Lightnings climbing toward their intercept carried engines that were good enough rather than perfect, navigation equipment that was reliable rather than elegant, and armament that was overwhelming rather than precise. More importantly, every component had been designed for mass production. Every system engineered for field maintenance by mechanics with limited training and abundant spare parts. At 9:30 a.m., Major Mitchell's formation approached the calculated intercept point. Below them, the Bougainville jungle stretched in every direction, its canopy broken only by the silver thread of a small river. Mitchell checked his watch. They were exactly on schedule. The mathematical precision of American planning had carried them 435 miles across open ocean to arrive within seconds of their predetermined time. 5 miles away, invisible to American eyes, Yamamoto's formation maintained its published course toward Balale Airfield. The Admiral sat in his customary position behind the pilot, his uniform immaculate, his expression serene. He was reviewing notes for his planned speech to the garrison commanders, words intended to restore fighting spirit among troops who had endured months of American bombing, who had watched American industrial might transform jungle islands into massive military bases seemingly. Overnight, the collision of these two realities, Japanese precision meeting American calculation, occurred at exactly 9:35 a.m. Captain Thomas Lanphier, leading the attack element of Mitchell's formation, spotted the Japanese aircraft first. 2 twin-engine bombers flying in formation with 6 escorting Zeros, exactly as American intelligence had predicted. The sight confirmed something larger than tactical success. It validated the entire American approach to warfare. Code-breaking, mathematical analysis, industrial production, and tactical execution had converged in a single moment of devastating effectiveness. The battle itself lasted less than 2 minutes. Lanphier's P-38 dove toward Yamamoto's bomber, its 450 caliber machine guns and single 20mm cannon concentrating their fire on the Betty's starboard engine. The Japanese aircraft, designed for range rather than survivability, proved fatally vulnerable to the Lightning's concentrated firepower. Yamamoto's bomber rolled inverted and plummeted into the jungle below, carrying with it not just Japan's greatest naval strategist, but an entire philosophy of warfare. The symbolic importance of what fell with Yamamoto extended far beyond a single man's death. His katana, found beside his body in the jungle wreckage, represented a warrior culture that had dominated Japanese thinking for centuries. The ceremonial sword, with its perfect steel and spiritual significance, embodied Japanese concepts of individual excellence, honor, and the decisive power of superior training. Its destruction in the Bougainville jungle marked the end of an era when such concepts could determine the outcome of industrial warfare. American search teams, arriving at the crash site days later, found evidence of a different kind of warfare entirely. Yamamoto's aircraft carried detailed records of Japanese fuel consumption, maintenance schedules, and operational capabilities. Information that American intelligence had already obtained through code breaking, but which confirmed the comprehensive nature of American penetration into Japanese planning. The Admiral's briefcase contained maps marked with defensive positions that American commanders had known about for weeks, battle plans that had been decoded and analyzed before Japanese field commanders received them. The transformation this represented was complete and irreversible. Japanese military culture, based on centuries of warrior tradition, had encountered American technological democracy and proven inadequate to the challenge. The same democratic values that Japanese militarists had dismissed as weakness, the emphasis on individual life, the investment in education, the decentralized creativity of civilian institutions, had produced the tools necessary to locate, track, and eliminate Japan's most capable military leader with surgical precision. Yet the larger lesson of Operation Vengeance extended beyond the Pacific War to the nature of democratic society itself. The mission's success depended not on individual heroism, though the pilots displayed extraordinary courage, but on the systematic application of collective intelligence. Codebreakers, mathematicians, meteorologists, mechanics, and pilots had functioned as components of a larger system, each contributing specialized knowledge to a common purpose. The democratic ideal of educated citizenship, dismissed by fascist theorists as inefficient and weak, had proven capable of mobilizing intellectual resources on a scale that no hierarchical system could match. The recurring symbol throughout this drama was not a weapon or a piece of equipment, but information itself, the decoded messages that flowed through American intelligence, networks like blood through arteries, carrying vital knowledge to every corner of the Pacific theater. Where Japanese communications moved vertically through rigid command structures, American intelligence flowed horizontally across institutional boundaries, connecting civilian scientists with military planners, university researchers with factory workers, codebreakers with combat pilots. This horizontal flow of information represented democracy's greatest strategic advantage: its ability to harness the collective intelligence of an entire society. The same First Amendment that protected civilian criticism of government also encouraged the open exchange of ideas that made rapid technological innovation possible. The same educational system that taught farm boys to read and write also produced the mathematicians who could crack enemy codes and the engineers who could design better aircraft. As Yamamoto's body was recovered from the Bougainville jungle, Japanese military leaders began to comprehend the scope of their miscalculation. They had attacked a nation they assumed to be weak and divided, only to discover an opponent capable of reading their most secret communications, predicting their movements with mathematical precision, and reaching across vast distances to eliminate their most capable commanders. The spiritual discipline of Bushido, the tactical brilliance of Japanese planning, the individual excellence of Japanese pilots, none of these advantages could compensate for America's systematic superiority in information, production, and technological innovation. The epilogue of Operation Vengeance resonates across decades, carrying lessons that extend far beyond military history. In the jungle clearing where Yamamoto died, investigators found scattered papers from his briefcase, tactical reports, personnel assessments, strategic analyses. These documents, written in careful calligraphy by staff officers trained in the classical traditions of Japanese military education, told the story of an empire increasingly aware of its own limitations. Fuel shortages, pilot attrition, communication failures, and industrial inadequacies, the accumulated weight of fighting a democracy whose resources seemed limitless. The contrast could not have been more complete. Where Yamamoto's papers reflected the growing desperation of a hierarchical system unable to adapt, American intelligence files from the same period reveal something entirely different: the confident expansion of a democratic society finding its full strength. Production figures that doubled and redoubled, training programs that graduated thousands of new pilots, research projects that promised revolutionary advances in radar, aircraft design, and communication technology. The deeper truth illuminated by Yamamoto's death was this: democratic societies, for all their apparent inefficiencies and internal contradictions, possess a unique capacity for mobilizing human intelligence. The same freedom of thought that produces political dissent also generates scientific innovation. The same respect for individual dignity that seems to weaken military discipline actually strengthens collective resolve. The same diversity of opinion that appears to fragment national unity ultimately enriches national capability. In the end, Operation Vengeance succeeded not because American pilots were braver than their Japanese opponents. Courage was abundant on both sides, but because American society had learned to aggregate and apply human knowledge more effectively than any hierarchical system could manage. The codebreakers who located Yamamoto, the navigators who guided the intercepting fighters, the mechanics who maintained the aircraft, the pilots who flew the mission, each represented not just individual skill, but collective wisdom, the accumulated intelligence of a democratic civilization discovering its own power. The morning mist that had shrouded Bougainville Island on April 18, 1943, eventually lifted, revealing a landscape forever changed. In the jungle clearing where Japan's greatest naval strategist fell, the wreckage of his aircraft slowly disappeared beneath tropical vegetation, reclaimed by a natural world indifferent to human ambition. But the larger transformation, the demonstration that democratic societies could wage technological warfare with unprecedented precision and effectiveness, would reshape the EIC's balance of global power for generations to come. That transformation began with dots and dashes transmitted across thousands of miles of ocean, with punch cards processed in basement rooms, with equations solved by mathematicians who never saw combat. It culminated in a 2-minute aerial engagement above a Pacific island, where American industrial democracy proved its superiority over Japanese warrior culture with devastating finality. The lesson echoed across the years. In an age of technological warfare, the nation that best mobilizes its collective intelligence will prevail, regardless of individual courage or traditional military virtues. The katana found beside Yamamoto's body, its perfect steel dulled by jungle humidity, bore silent witness to this larger truth. Crafted by generations of swordsmiths who viewed their work as sacred duty, the blade represented the pinnacle of individual artisanship. Yet, it had proven powerless against weapons created by teams of engineers working within democratic institutions, guided by scientific method rather than ancient tradition. The sword's silence spoke louder than any victory speech. The age of the individual warrior hero had ended, replaced by an era when societies themselves became weapons, when the collective intelligence of free peoples could reach across oceans to strike with surgical precision. In this new age, information moved faster than steel, and minds proved more powerful than swords. The democracy that Yamamoto had sought to humble had instead demonstrated its most fundamental strength, the ability to transform every citizen into a participant in victory, every institution into an instrument of national purpose, every idea into a potential weapon against tyranny. The morning he died marked not just the end of a brilliant military career, but the beginning of American century, an era when democratic values, allied with technological innovation, would reshape the world.